Hello, and welcome back to the Hello Velocity podcast, where we help corporate women level up without burning out. I'm your host, Brittany Canaski, leadership coach and trainer here at Hello Velocity. And today we're going to be continuing our conversation about confidence and looking at it from another new angle. So our first episode of the season, we kind of kicked off our conversation about confidence by thinking about what your relationship is to confidence. And now I want us to go a little bit deeper, looking at it from another angle. And that is, what is your relationship to confidence in the spaces where you want to be confident? You may not have spent much time thinking about this, but I want you to really take a few moments to think about your relationship to the places where you want to feel more confident. And do you feel supported in those spaces? Do you feel safe enough to be yourself? Do you feel supported in being yourself? Do you feel like you have permission to be confident in those spaces? Do you feel like you have permission to be confident in yourself in those spaces? These are some things, again, you may want to pause right now and think about it a little bit more. So this is one of those big things that I see holding women back in corporate spaces specifically, and you may notice it in other spaces as well, so I want you to take a look for yourself specifically. But today we are going to focus on the corporate America workplace and the most common things that I see coming up for women. And what I'm realizing from my own experiences and from talking with dozens of women about this topic is that essentially I see women are honestly having to do what I'm calling mental gymnastics in their day-to-day life when it comes to most corporate settings. What I mean by mental gymnastics is that we're constantly in our heads trying to behave a certain way, trying to anticipate other people's behaviors. And honestly, I think it's like we're trying to fit in a box that wasn't necessarily made for us. So we're trying to adapt to our surroundings. And by that, I mean, honestly, corporate America, whether you realize this or not, was in most places built by men for men, whether consciously or subconsciously. That's just the nature of our workforce here in America. And honestly, even though we've come a long way from the Mad Men stereotype of the early 1900s, we still have a long way to go, unfortunately. And we still get that boys club mentality in a lot of work environments. And again, it's still a lot better than it used to be, but there are still so many instances where women may just not feel comfortable being themselves. They may not feel like they can be their full selves. They may feel like they can't be confident in themselves. And they're constantly putting on almost like a face to try to fit into this boys club or try to fit into what the expected way of working is, which again was historically based on men. And I know, I'm sure most women listening to this have stories of their own and personal experiences where there are different ways and experiences that you've had where maybe you felt like you didn't fit in, or you felt like there was almost something holding you back being a woman, or that you were seeing things in a completely different way being a woman, but you didn't feel like you could speak up about it. Or I know myself, something that I've noticed a lot is just honestly how many times I'm maybe one of the only women in the room or one of very few women in the room. And you can tell it's just a different way that we feel like we need to show up in those rooms. And again, it's like we're always trying to fit into this mold of what has been built before. And now we're in this interesting place in our society where we're starting to shift in a direction where we can be in these spaces, we can be our true selves, we can speak up more, but there are still some subconscious beliefs, both probably on our side and definitely in other people's mindsets, that can be holding us back. So some interesting stats I want to share today. This is one of those topics I'm super passionate about, and I could honestly soapbox about it all day, and I'm going to do my best to stay on track and on point today. And there were a few stats I just wanted to call out that really prove this point, that there are differences between men and women in the workplace, specifically here in the US. Something I learned about just a few years ago that blew my mind was that in 2023 was the first time that there were more women CEOs in the S&P 500 companies than there were men named John. This is one of those that really felt like such a gut punch when in the last few years, it does feel like we've made a lot of progress, But then to hear something like that, I'll share all these links in the show notes too if you're curious to learn more about this. But one of the articles about this topic, because this was pretty big in 2023, I saw on a lot of different platforms and articles. One of the platforms shared as a comparison point of the US population, only 3.27% of the US population is actually named job, where obviously women comprise of 50% of that population. So it's just one of those really hard hitting that not only are we that far different, but we're that far behind. But it's really even to that degree that one name could be that far ahead than women in general. Like that just is mind-boggling to me. One other fact that I want to point out that I found across a few different studies that I think really brings this point home of how hard it can be for women to be confident in the US corporate workplace is that, again, multiple studies have found this, that men tend to be promoted based on potential, where women tend to be promoted based on experience. I see it on both sides, both women, and we've heard the stat many times, I'm sure you've all heard this, that women are less likely to apply for a new job if they don't hit all the qualifications on the job description. That is part of this, and that women are doing this to ourselves because we don't feel as confident going into a situation like that where we may not hit exactly every criteria. But then on the other side, of course, this is part of these systems and processes that are in place that are or tend to be inherently biased against women and how we show up in the workplace, that we tend to promote men based on their potential, right? A lot of it is like oh, he's a great guy, we trust him, let's see what he can do, versus women feeling like, and I know, again, myself and a lot of women I've worked with, we feel like we have to really prove ourselves a lot further and longer than men do, and this is part of that. And again, there are multiple studies that back this up, but it comes into performance review conversations. There's a ton of other studies out there I've found specific to even performance review evaluations, or when you're being considered for roles or looking at someone's resume and the different words that are used to describe men and women. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of that today, but I want you to just be mindful of these spaces. And this is why I bring this up and why it's so important, is that it is a bit of a hill that we're climbing, or honestly, I'm going to say it's actually a mountain that we're climbing. And I share all this because I want you to know it's not just in your head. There are so many flaws in our systems, in our corporations, in our processes, and a lot of times we don't realize it. I'm sure so many women can relate to, there's all these different experiences that you've had where you know men are experiencing the same thing very differently, or they're being reacted to very differently. So I want you to know that the facts prove this. It's not just in your head. But I also want to emphasize that it's not like companies and leaders are building these teams and building these companies directly to go against women, right? It's not a conscious effort, I think, for the most part. There is a lot of this subconscious behavior going on. And again, it's in how all of these systems may have been built over decades or even hundreds of years, right? So it is a bit of an uphill climb, but I want to give you some specific ideas and tools to think about this, of how you can show up as your full self, how you can show up with confidence, even in the spaces that weren't built for you. And actually, this podcast episode is one of those that I've been thinking about for months. It's been kind of ruminating. It's been rolling around in my brain for months, and I've been trying to record it over and over again. And I finally feel like I've come up with a bit more of a metaphor to help describe this, because it was so hard to bring this to be a bit more tangible, because again, I could be on my soapbox talking about how unfair this is, and I can share all my own personal experiences of when I felt I was mistreated because I was a woman, or especially as a young woman in corporate America. And there's all of that, but I realize that's not exactly what we need to hear and what we need to talk about today. What I want to share with you is this metaphor that I've come up with, or this better way to describe the experiences of women in corporate America. And this is, again, based on my own experience and from plenty of my clients too, as a way to help you not only understand it yourself and maybe start to see it more specifically, but then also to be able to describe it to other people so that we can point out these things that are happening in our teams, in our conversations, in our interactions in the workplace to hopefully help even the playing field for us as women. And I also want to point out that all of this too is even worse for women of color. And there are, again, so many statistics out there that I've seen, and I'm sure you've all heard that too. So it's an even bigger hill that they are climbing. And it's something, again, that I'm super passionate about helping as many women and women of color as I can, because it is such a daunting feeling I've heard from my clients who are women of color, and it can feel so isolating too. So this is something for all of us to consider and all of us to think about how we can support each other better. So what I've seen as being essentially my best way to describe this experience of women in the workplace is that we are essentially, again, we're trying to fit ourselves into this box that wasn't really created for us. So a lot of this I see is that women are being asked to follow this set of unspoken rules in the workplace that seems to be very different for us as women versus how it is for men. And how I see it, usually the two extremes that I see it is being on one end or the other when it comes to being friendly versus being direct. It feels like, and again, so many different experiences, both personally and with clients, it feels like men are given this wider spectrum of behavior that they're allowed to show and emotions, and they just get more grace in different situations. I can give some specific examples. And then it feels like when women do the same things, they have some sort of negative reactions, or they get negative reactions to the same behaviors. So it's almost like our spectrum is a lot smaller. So we're trying to literally fit ourselves into this set of rules of how we behave. And if we go to the extremes, and again, extreme, it's not even doing anything that negative, but if we go past a certain point, and again, this is all very subconscious, unwritten rules, but if we go past a certain point, it's as if we are being held back both by ourselves and by the people that we're working with. And that's when we get labeled certain negative things. That's when we get treated differently. And it's like we get no grace. We just are held to these higher standards. And we, again, thinking back to what I mentioned earlier, it's like we have to prove ourselves even more over and over and over again within this smaller spectrum, within this tighter box. And it's like we're trying to put on this face of this is how it has to be, and this is who we are, and we're trying so hard to fit into these roles that we are no longer being ourselves. We are what we think we need to be and who we think we need to be to fit into these spaces, to not get called certain names, to not get a negative performance review or anything like that. And it's mental gymnastics. That's why I keep coming back to this term. It's exhausting. It's putting in all of this effort internally and even filtering ourselves so much and how we're showing up and trying to fit into a boys' club, that it's mental gymnastics. It's a lot of work mentally. So on the spectrum, when it's the friendly versus direct, what I see on the friendly side is that if a man is friendly, he's seen as a great guy and he's super trustworthy. And that's where it comes into what we talked about earlier, is that men are more likely to be promoted based on potential. It's that, okay, you're allowed to be in this space and it will actually help you propel your career, right? You're a great guy, love to grab a beer with you, love to play golf with you. So we're going to trust you more and we're going to give you more responsibility, or we're going to be able to promote you. Where I see when women are on the spectrum of being more friendly, a lot of times we're not taken as seriously. And again, it goes both ways. It's both on us and our environments, in that when we are past a certain point of friendly, sometimes we struggle as a leader to delegate or to say no, or it can be hard for us to have hard conversations. And sometimes then we take on additional work, we take on more ourselves, or we even take on that extra labor in office settings where it's the, oh, she's so great, she'll help plan a party for someone's birthday, or she'll take notes in the meeting. All of these other situations we've heard that women tend to get asked to do these things, or women tend to volunteer for this extra administrative side of the work that can actually hold us back, where we think, oh, we're just being nice, we're being friendly, we're helping out. But that's not typically what gets you promotions, right? That can almost put you in a box to be taken less seriously as a leader, which again, I know I'm going to share all these things and I know it's not fair. And I'm doing my best to stay neutral in this conversation and share it more from fact-based and experiences. But honestly, it gets me really worked up. So I am even having to check myself as I record this and have this conversation. So then on the other side of the spectrum of friendly versus direct, when men are direct, they are seen as a great leader. Oh, he is a strong leader. He can say what's on his mind. He can really lead people. Yet, if a woman were to say the same things, if a woman, again, whatever this unwritten spectrum is, if she passes a certain point and she's being direct and she's saying what's on her mind, she's oftentimes seen as a bitch or labeled as a bitch, or is told she's unapproachable, or is told to smile more, or is told to not be so emotional. And sometimes I see it when some women leaders go to this certain point where they are being seen as so aggressive. It's almost even more complicated in that a lot of times I think women are, and I've seen myself do this too, is that when you're trying so hard to fit into the boys' club, you're almost putting on this face of, oh, I need to be taken more seriously. I need to do more to be taken seriously. So I need to act like one of the guys. So I want to try to be more direct, or I want to try to be more forceful and authoritative. And you hope that it'll work. But again, with these double standards, it often doesn't work out for us. And when we are putting on this face and we're trying to show up a certain way that is essentially against our nature or against our values and who we are, we tend to push people away because we're not being ourselves. We're not able to connect with people. I think that's something that's missing. And it's almost, again, that's why this is almost a spectrum, because on the left here, being more friendly, it's almost like we're somehow too connected and we're being too emotional and we want to help everyone and be friends with everyone. And then on the other side, it's almost like we're pushing people away because we're trying so hard to be taken seriously. We're trying so hard to be more of the leader and authoritative figure. And we need to find that balance, or we need to figure out what's instead going to work for us. So these are just a few examples of what I see pretty common, and honestly what I've experienced myself. I've been on both sides of this when I was in the corporate environment, and I've seen both tend to work to a certain degree, but they typically aren't going to be the things that get you where you want to be. They will eventually hold you back, and it's just a matter of when. So again, if you haven't yet, take a few moments to think about, where are you putting on some sort of a face? Where are you not being yourself? And how are you not being yourself? What are you doing that's trying to maybe fit into a space? And where are you struggling to be confident? And what is it about that space, about that environment, about the people that doesn't allow you to be yourself and to be confident in yourself? And I have a few specific areas that I want you to start thinking about in order to help you navigate this process. And I know one podcast episode is not going to solve all of our problems, but I want these to be ongoing conversations, ongoing reflections that you're having of how can we change this environment? How can we level the playing field for more women? How can we be able to show up as our confident selves, as our full selves? Another way to think about this is, where are you trying to fit in? Where are you shrinking yourself or doing some sort of mental gymnastics to try to fit in, to try to hit a certain maybe stereotype you even have in your head of what a good leader looks like, or whatever the environment is that you're trying to fit into? Where are you trying to fit into what you think is expected of you or what you should be doing? And think about, first of all, do you even want to be in that space? That's a fair question. Sometimes we are forcing ourselves into spaces that doesn't even make sense, and it's not even aligned with who we are, and that's okay too. But obviously, a lot of other times, especially the workplace environment, it may be really hard to find a space that is made for women by women. So many of us will have to continue to navigate these dynamics, and I don't want us to just shrink and give up. I want us to continue to move the needle forward till we have more equality in the workplace and we're seen as equals and we're treated as equals and we're not having to put on a face and we're not having to behave differently. And the second place I want you to think about is, instead of looking externally for guidance of how to fit in or how you want to show up, let's start to look internally. And I know I recommend this all the time, or it feels like I do. It's one of my favorite tools, is to identify your core values. And if you haven't done it yet, there will be a link in the show notes to a free download to help you walk through the process yourself. And there's actually, I believe it was episode number 2 of season 1, where I talk through this process of how to come up with your core values. Highly, highly, highly recommend it, because once you have those core values, they become this guiding light for you. They become this pillar inside you of what you stand for and how you want to show up, so that regardless of the environment, regardless of the situation, you have something that you can stay true to in how you show up. And it allows you to be more confident in yourself, to know what you stand for, to know how you want to behave in certain situations, how you want to react to situations with integrity, to be your full self and to stand up for what's most important to you. And it's so powerful. And I know I say this a lot too, is that it sounds so simple. It's 3 words that you stand for, 3 statements that you stand for that light you up, but it really will change how you show up in these environments. And it will allow you to stay true to yourself despite what other people are doing around you. And it'll allow you to show up with way more confidence and be able to make decisions with more confidence too. And I know, again, this is an uphill battle, and it's going to take a long time, I'm sure, for these systems to change, for these companies to change, and for women to be seen and to feel like we're equals in these spaces. But one other big thing that can help during this transition and to help move this transition along quicker is by finding your own advocates, mentors, and allies who can help you through this process, who can be the people that you go to talk through these issues that you're having, or to talk through what may feel unfair in the moment, to have someone that you can talk to, specifically someone that doesn't look like you. So I even love this idea of reverse mentoring, of mentoring and partnering up essentially with someone who is more your senior in the workplace, whether it's in your own company or a different company, and you can mentor each other, right? You can learn from that person, they can learn from you, and it really can help bridge this gap, I think, both generationally and specifically if your allies are men, right? You can start to point out some of these, whether it's microaggressions that you're noticing in the workplace or just some of these comments that you're getting and realizing, they would never say that to a man. That's something that I notice a lot and have noticed my whole life. It's like, wow, I got some sort of feedback or was judged a certain way and they said something specifically to me that felt demeaning, usually is how it goes. And when I know it's wrong is when I realize and recognize that they would never say that to a man, even if he was in my same position, my same age, whatever, if he did the same thing as me. And those are the things we need to start talking about with other people, specifically allies, advocates, sponsors who are men in the workplace, because again, our stats from the beginning, there are so many men in leadership positions and we want them on our side. This is not a battle of the sexes. This is not us versus them. We need to come together. And a lot of times they just don't see these things happening right in front of them. And they don't understand the implications of what it means being a woman in the workplace. Understandably, because they're not a woman in the workplace. They've never had to think about these things. They've often never been in a space where they are the only man, right? Especially in workplace settings. So we need to start sharing these experiences, sharing these situations with the men and get their support and ask for their support and see what comes to mind for them. Start brainstorming together. What changes need to happen? What can we do differently? How can we come together and we can make it better for all of us? Again, it's not an us versus them. We're not making the pie smaller for them by giving us more equality and more respect in the workplace. It will make everything better for everyone. I wholeheartedly believe that. And it's going to take some uncomfortable conversations. Honestly, I feel uncomfortable sharing this, but it's something I'm so passionate about. I want to share it more widely. I want more people to know that this is important and that this happens. And this is something I'm constantly trying to educate other people about in smaller situations too. So despite it being uncomfortable, I'm sharing this because it is very important. And I'm sharing because there's a lot of work to be done. But I know it's possible. And I know we will all be better off by having these conversations, by doing this work, by coming together and making things better off for all of us in the long run. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I hope you have a lot to think about and a lot of new ideas you want to work through. But what's one specific thing you want to take action on from what you learned today? And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a quick like or review on whichever platform you are listening on. It really does help other people find the podcast and in turn get the support that they're looking for as well. That's it for today. We'll see you in the next episode.